Hello, everyone. It's Sunday night, and that means it is time for another episode of Explain Yourself. I'm your host, Benjamin Morris. Joey Galvez is out tonight, so I am flying solo. But we have some great guests tonight and some awesome books to talk about. So I'm going to bring in our guests, Justin Koch and Devin Arscott. How's it going, guys?
Hey, thanks for having us. Those are really great intros. I mean, I was impressed.
Thank you. I tried to go as sports center as possible with our graphics.
Great.
I hope my dad would be proud. But guys, excited to talk about your books. I've seen some artwork for both of them. They're really cool stuff. So, Justin, we'll start with you. Give us the 30-second elevator pitch for SWAT.
Well, SWAT is the Secret Wizard Assault Team, and if you want to see Harry Potter as a busted-down St. Louis detective, barely getting by on Adderall and counting down the days to his pension and fighting vampires, this is the comic for you.
Awesome. And Devin, talk to us about the Lion of Olympus. Give us the 30-second pitch for that.
So the Lion of Olympus is basically my take on Hercules' epic adventures. And the subtitle for this book is Hera's Wrath. So obviously Hera's coming after him. She's, throwing a couple familiar faces at him to basically get rid of him. She's tired of him, doesn't want him around anymore. So I figure this is a fun way to, start off some new epic adventures and just kind of showcase Hercules in a new light than what we've seen normally.
Very cool. So, I've seen a lot of artwork from both these books. It's really cool stuff. And I guess we'll kind of get into it. Justin, your campaign is on Zoop.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll share the window for that real quick. But I want to actually just show some artwork from the campaign. And bring this up. I have to do this differently. So kind of tell us a little bit about, this is the Zoop link. Obviously, this is also in the description if you're watching this on YouTube. And I'll switch over real quick to some of the artwork from the book so we can kind of go through this a little bit more and tell us a little bit more about SWAT in terms of, kind of obvious sort of Harry Potter meets the Skids a little bit. Tell us a little bit more about this book in depth. What's the story arc? What are we going to get from this?
Well, it's 36 issues long. I've written all of them. So it's six issue arcs. So the story's all over the place, and I really don't want to get too in depth with it because that is a spoiler, or it's hard to talk about without it being spoilers. But basically, like I said, they start out about 2 years away from their pension when they get an order from Girk, the evil police sergeant. It's a 80. Yeah, there's a lot of police cliches in the series that I'm working with. Tells them they have to fire somebody, and so instead of doing that, they decide to call in a tip on a vampire that they know has a bunch of bodies buried in his backyard to create a red ball, and the situation just sort of spirals from there. And it's what we do in Shadows and The Wire and the Harry Potter, and it's a whole mess of dirty.
What you just said reminds me a lot of the last season of The Wire, where they kind of create some work for themselves and
oh yeah,
yeah,
I have, that might have been in the back of my head. I never thought of that until now, but that is kind of, I mean, they just they're scrappy, they're survivalists, and so they do what they need to do to. Also, they really hate their sergeant, so they love to mess with him as well. So that's a big part of they enjoy it. They love their work on that front. But the series starts with Larry. Well, it doesn't start here, but back in high school, basically in 1999, he survived a school shooting in which he shot this universe's version of Voldemort, Morgana Le Fay, and it kind of a lot of the story is about how that incident really ruined his life, and everything has revolved around it and him processing that trauma. And things like that. So
very cool. I mean, in my book, August, I kind of really took the premise to be sort of Luke Skywalker, and then this happens. And I think I think the Harry Potter stuff is pretty obvious from looking at the art.
Yeah.
And
it starts out there. I was kind of really mad at J.K. Rowling a couple of years ago for something she said on Twitter. I don't remember at this
Oh,
point.
has she said anything controversial?
No. She quit. And so that's kind of where it started from. But it quickly becomes a lot more than just a Harry Potter parody, I think. I mean, it's got a lot of soul to it that it's not just a paint by numbers mockery or anything. So, for instance, in this case, in the first arc, they're chasing a vampire who they've got, they want to get in within a day because, man, I am sucking right now. Basically, they start out, as I said, trying to fake the red ball, and it just spirals out from there. The vampire's a lot smarter than they thought, and they're not as smart as they thought they were, and it just sort of goes from there into a chaotic and kind of unhinged nightmare.
So one of the things I really loved from seeing these pages, and it's something I didn't really have time to get into with one of my books, August, is I took a ton of 80s influences. There was a lot of Lethal Weapon, a little bit of Die Hard in there. And I really wanted there to be like the angry chief and also the other like jerk partners that like are in the station that give the main characters crap. And I really couldn't quite work it in like naturally. But I'm such a big fan of that convention. Like you have the sort of cop show thing, and it's really awesome to see kind of a Harry Potter analog in that situation. I think that's a really good way to kind of get what you're, like say like, yeah, I'm doing Harry Potter, but it goes in this other direction, and kind of encompasses these other genres. Obviously, Harry Potter's an influence here. As far as comics go, like, is there a comic that really was a big influence on this, and like, how did that influence you? Like, what did you try to bring in from that?
Well, I read so many. I think I pretty much pay my comic store's rent. So there's a lot of them. Cullen Bunn has been kind of and then Ed Brubaker as he kind of, I guess he'd be the main source of the true crime comic stuff. And beyond the comics, like James Ellroy I've been a big fan of his for a long time. I think I really enjoy the way he, in the Underworld trilogy, for instance, gets super telegraphic style wise. Everything is just punchy, to the point where it's almost hard to read sometimes. But once you get used to it, it's awesome. And and he has a lot of crime stuff too. So Elroy was definitely an influence. But I mean, there's just so many great comics. I really love The Heart of Sweet Tooth by Jeff Lemire. Rick Remender can be really inspiring sometimes. I mean, mostly what I like about comics is that it's just so unhinged. You can just do whatever you want, right? And people, they love it. They're not going to go, it's boring, or not boring, but why didn't you fly an eagle to Mordor or something like that, right? They're going to roll with it. And that was a big part of what I really enjoy about comics and writing them, is just how imaginatively free it is, while it's also really structured. Because you've got to get stuff done. You've got 21 pages, 22 if you've going long. So you've got a lot of structure you have to work with at the same time. And I always found that interesting.
Yeah, that's something I really love, is that when you kind of have the visual language of comics, I think there are disadvantages. When you look at script writing, people kind of tend to the movie TV side of things in terms of being really dialogue heavy. When you're in comics, it's so visual, and I'm an artist, so I certainly go to that by default. But like, you can just have this picture, like right here. You totally get what this is about in 2 seconds. This is Harry Potter, but he's a cop. Like, and then you can run with that without really setting it up at all. And I think that gives you a lot of advantages when you're a comic.
I think you're right. I mean, there's just so many things that you can draw and people will get instantly that you would have to spend 5,000 words.
Yeah.
Get them to sort of picture it. But if you can draw it, which you can draw almost anything, well, I mean, Rachel can. I can't draw anything. You can just convey so much in one thing, one image, one panel. It's a big part of what I like about it. I feel like it really helped me like get through is having the artist there kind of helping me out to do all this exposition in the background is very helpful. So
Yeah, well, it's always good to listen to your artist. I'm never gonna say anything different than that. But yeah, I mean that's I think a big advantage of like really appreciating comic book format is you can kind of say to yourself, certain things are much easier to cross more quickly. At the same time, you generally have 22 pages, and that's a lot of stuff to get across in a short amount of time.
yeah,
And it makes you really kind of concentrate your decisions creatively and say like, okay, how many pages am I going to spend for this scene?
that's what's awesome about it, right? Because sometimes you've got this scene and it needs to be one page, and the first draft is 7 panels, and that's too crowded. So you go back and I can dump that. I can roll those into one, and I always enjoyed that. Like I said, the structure or having deadlines really, I find it stimulating. So, but yeah, I mean, a lot of it's all over the place. Like for instance, I mean, if we can talk about the characters for a second, there's Larry. Sure. That's fine. Maybellina's on the team. She is she's based on a person I knew, and she thinks she claims to be a psychic. That's the red-haired lady at the end. She claims to be a psychic. She thinks she's a fake psychic, but she actually is a psychic in that she is always attracted to the worst possible decision, right? So like you put her in a situation where if she actually wants to do something, you just do the opposite. And that's based off this one lady that I was representing. She'd been buying allergy pills to make meth with, right? And she just had an unholy ability to say the exact wrong thing, right? Like when you're in court, there's just some things you don't want to say to the judge. It just makes it worse. She would home in on the exact thing she shouldn't say and say it every time. And that was sort of the inspiration for Maybellina. I mean, it was unholy, dude. Like she must have known, like she must have been pretty smart to immediately get to the wrongest thing. She just had some sort of impulse control problem. Anyway, yeah. So
that is wild. I mean, within whatever you can say, like you've got to give me some background on that. That's a pretty crazy story. How did you meet this woman?
Well, I'm a lawyer, so I was assigned to represent her, basically.
Okay.
So, I'm in all these conversations with the prosecutor and the FBI or the DEA with her, and she's just over there, just stop saying ounces, stop saying ounces. Don't get specific or whatever, right? I mean, we did fine. She did. I mean, she was looking at 10 years. I think we got her 2, so that's pretty solid in the federal system. But yeah, I mean, I didn't even have her talk at sentencing because I'm like, she's just going to take credit for 9/11 or something. I don't know. So, yeah, and then Lisa, she's sort of she's the normie. She doesn't actually realize that she's in a secret wizard assault team. She's just there because she's being punished for doing her job. And then Hermes, the older guy on the left, he's 3,000 years old. He's very senile and he refuses to retire. So that's pretty much the team. And Mimi, of course, is kind of the Hermione version, and she's surprisingly violent. Yeah.
All right. I mean, I'm such a fan of cop movies and like your sort of Lethal Weapon stuff. So this looks cool. I mean, I'm getting a lot of usual suspects vibe here, which
that's definitely what we're referencing with the cover for sure. Yeah, I mean, it's a grab bag of just a lot of it's just 80s and 90s Missouri nerd stuff, honestly. But 80s, 90s pop culture, Adult Swim, Venture Brothers is kind of a huge influence in a lot of ways, not specific to this, but just in sort of what I think is funny, I guess. Mm-hmm. In terms of interactions. But yeah, it's a lot of fun, and all those cliches and things that I'm playing with, I'm always inverting and coming at them in mm-hmm. weird angles so it's not just a pile of cliches. It's not a, remember that kind of thing. So
no, that's what I think is really, that's kind of what I try to do with my stuff is like, you've got the cliches. Sometimes you lean into them, sometimes you don't, but you have to really approach them as like, we're not just saying, hey, remember this, like you've got to do something interesting with them, whether that's teasing if you're going to follow the cliche or not, or just like kind of subverting it, which I don't often like to do. But I mean, you really have to be intelligent with how you do that, and definitely want to talk more. Oh, go ahead.
No, go for it.
Yeah. Like I said, I definitely want to talk more about that, but I wanted to switch over to the Lion of Olympus, since we're about at the 15-minute mark here. So, Devin, obviously dealing with some well-known mythological stuff here,
Of course.
kind of in the same vein. Tell us a little
Yeah.
bit more about the Lion of Olympus.
Oh, definitely. I wanted to do something a little bit different than, say, Magni the Mighty or, anything else that people may have seen me do prior, because it seems like I have a habit of doing things that kind of revolve themselves around mythology, whether it's, Greek, Norse, or Yoruba mythology, which is in another book that I do called Magnus. So it's seems like that's all my favorite song and dance. So I want to really just kind of lay into it kind of hard this time, and just kind of give a soul focus to somebody that everybody knows instead of say Magni and Modi, who very no almost nobody know of. People
Mhm.
keep telling me, hey, they don't know anything about Thor's kids. They knew, nobody knows he had kids until I said something. Or you play the God of War game that came out a year or two ago. Like that's as much as you really get to see of his kids. So, but yeah, I thought the Lion of Olympus would be a good way for me to just do something different, do something fun, um, and so far so good. Still got 15 days on the Kickstarter, so can't complain.
So to go into a little bit of what you mentioned, what I really loved about Magni was like I remember reading that and I thought it just took me back to the best parts of reading like old comics, which is to say like it felt like I just picked up a comic that was like the first one after a big crossover event. Everyone's
Yeah,
recovering, they're setting up the new plot lines, and it just felt like, man, this feels great. I haven't read anything like this in a long time. I didn't realize how much I missed it, that sort of thing. And I thought that was a really cool way to like play with the mythology of something, but like really just bring it into comics and give it a really good vibe. And it kind of sounds like from what you're saying, you kind of wanted to do that, but also kind of just give us, not the side characters or the characters everyone's not really familiar with, but like, no, we're taking it, we're giving you Hercules, we're doing this.
exactly. And it's funny. I've read a lot of comic books in my very short life, uh, and I'm like, you know what? A lot of people don't do what I do. I notice. A lot of people usually set things up vastly different than I do.
Mm-hmm.
But it seems that no matter what book I write or what, I always have a habit of just kind of throwing you into something that feels familiar, but it's clearly different.
Mm-hmm.
So, with Maggie and Mighty, it was clearly, just like what you said, it was like a big event had finished over, whatever. And we jump into these characters and like what's going on with them. So there's that's essentially what this is. But again, you have Hercules. So Hercules is somebody that everybody knows, very popular figure. But at the same time, like I'm starting at a point where you could really place this story anywhere in his history, so
Mm-hmm.
to speak. So it's like, well, all right, well we know he did the 12 labors, yada yada yada. But then what did he do in between time? Like, no, not many people tend to care about what's going on in between, events.
Mm-hmm.
So I take pride in just building things around these other events and stories, and just kind of fleshing things out a lot more. I'm very thoughtful. I did maybe 2 weeks worth of research before I started even crafting this. And this book wasn't even originally going to be a single, well, two single issues first. It was going to be like a big anthology book just about Hercules originally. And I was like, no, that's going to take too long. I do have stories for it put to the side, and this was not one of them originally. So this was something I was like, all right, well, let's do something that's easily accessible without me just, okay, here's a big forward now, here's a bunch of stories in a book, and then whatever. So, but as you can see here from the artwork, you know, you got Hera and Ares overlooking Hercules. He's on vacation in Thebes, you know, just trying to enjoy himself from whatever adventure he's coming off of. So it's the best time for her to strike, you know, and then from there it just kind of gets hectic. This is like one of two parts. So in total, it'll be like 44 pages of story between this first issue and the next issue. And then from there, it's just like I want to do more of a series, kind of like how Hellboy was. You know, you have a series of like one shots and like limited series, not a specific point in time that you have to read from. You can pretty much pick up a book anywhere and, you know, understand what's going on without having to backtrack or whatever, you know. And that's basically what this series is in a nutshell compared to anything else I've ever written, which is all mostly linear, you know, stories.
Yeah, that's something I think is it's cool to see people do that, because you know, like, you kind of have to focus on what you're giving to your audience. Like,
Yeah,
okay, how much do you need to do backstory here? How much do I need to set up? Or if I'm going to take an established character I can use, you know, like, figure out what, you know, is probably like the general knowledge base of that character. You can use that to just kind of get to the good stuff, or get to the more interesting stuff that happens in
exactly.
between what people are used to. And that's, I think, really cool and smart to do, because you know, I mean, I got a little bit more Hercules, I think, than most people, because my fifth grade teacher was Greek, and we basically had a year download of like everything you can imagine. I
Wow.
remember most of it, but you know, it's good to think of, like, just look at a character that's really established,
Mm,
whether that's from like Disney's Hercules, or
yep,
just the general, you know, the movies people have seen, or the sort of background knowledge people have of him. They kind of know what he is, what he looks like, what he can do in the 12 labors. And then you've got that, and you can kind of sit down and say, okay, everybody knows that. I know that. Let's work with something interesting that builds on that. And I think that's a really good thing
exactly.
to do, especially in crowdfunding, because you know, you really have to get people's attention. You really have to say, like, here's what I'm offering, and like, let people kind of gravitate to that and give a good offering based on that, um, which is, you know, definitely a cool approach. I actually worked in a movie theater the year Hercules came out, so all those songs have been stuck in my head all week since I've been looking at this.
Well, I'm glad because that's actually one of my favorite childhood movies is Hercules. I actually just picked up that comic that recently came out from Dynamite. I haven't got
I
to read
saw
it
it.
yet, so
Yeah,
hopefully it's as good as I expect it to be. So
Looks
yeah,
great.
yeah. It does. I was going to say,
Uh,
you're this artist. I mean, is doing great stuff. This really reminds me a lot of Pepe Larraz, or sort of
yeah,
his um his House of X, Power of X stuff.
I
Really
agree.
nice stuff here.
Emmanuel is actually, you know, a fairly new artist. I don't think he's been doing this very long. I've worked with him maybe what handful of times prior
Hmm.
to this on other people's stuff, but I approached him to work with me uh, for this book, and I think we did a mock up of a Western book that I'm going to eventually focus on. Um, but yeah, he's got a very great style. You know, he's got a lot of room to grow. He's only like 22 or 23, I believe. So he's a lot
Oh wow,
younger than I
yeah,
am. So
he's going to be good.
oh
Wow.
yeah, and he's getting better by the day. I see, you know, his progress all the time. It's just like wow. I wish I would have, you know, continued to focus on artwork, but I was like, no, let's keep the writing thing going. So
be nice to be able to do it all, but
Yeah, well, that's what I
not
do.
enough
It takes
time
a
in a
lot of
day.
time, guys. I don't know.
Definitely.
Sometimes I'm not sure it's the greatest thing, but
I don't know. You're killing it. I love everything that you do, so
oh,
can't complain
appreciate that.
about that.
Yeah, if only I could get a little bit more sleep. That would be the trick.
Sleep, we'll sleep.
Yeah, that's what I hear. But yeah, I love the artwork for this. Like I said, it gives me that Pepe Larraz vibe, in a big way. And God, just hearing how young he is, dude,
Yeah.
he's gonna skyrocket.
Oh,
He's
most
gonna be,
definitely.
this even here. I was looking at earlier today, and I thought, yeah, this is some really mature stuff. The way he leaves, the way he's spotting his inks, and then like leaving this open. This
Yeah.
is like this is like you've been around the block a few times. You kind of know what you're doing.
Exactly.
So I'm pretty shocked and also a little bit upset to hear how young he is and how good he's doing.
Well,
But
you can always mentor him if you'd like. Wouldn't hurt me at all. It
I'm not
just
going to
kind
help
of
this
helped me
guy
out.
out, man. He's going to kick my butt in a year or two.
Well, that just gives you incentives to say, "Hey, I helped him out. Get a little better."
Yeah, no, but
So,
all joking aside, I mean, he's definitely on his way. This is amazing stuff. I'm
yeah.
shocked to hear how new he is to the game. Um, Tell me a little bit about the character design of Hercules here. You've obviously kind of incorporated some of the elements that we're used to hearing about, and I think you're probably also constrained by the Disney movie or kind of the general what does like somebody off the street think of Hercules. How did you
Yeah.
balance that, and how did you guys come up with how it looks?
So, for the most part, I try to just give general, you know, ideas for balancing, how I envision things. And then just from there, I let, any artist that I work with as a collaborator just do whatever they want. And, I tweak a couple things and then go from there. But for the most part, I wanted them to, clearly be that, battle hardened warrior, but at the same time, you have to balance that out with a contemporary look of some sort. I want to very much hold true to his Greek origins and all that. So I gave a lot of references
Mhm.
as far as that's concerned, and then from there, I what did I do? Obviously, I referenced the Hercules movie and a couple other looks, and then from there, Emmanuel sent me back a couple things, and you know it looked great. I want to incorporate the Nemean lion on the shoulder. The club. I didn't know exactly if he had a legendary weapon of some sort. A lot of characters usually have weapons that they're familiar for having. Thor with his hammer and etc. So what does Hercules have? It couldn't be just his fists. So give him a club. Give him a cool wooden club, which he has there in the picture. And it's just like from there, it was you know uh, all she wrote pretty much. It ended up being the look that he has and will have for the foreseeable future and until the story has run its course whenever that's going to be. But for the most part, yeah, that's pretty much how it come along. I don't really try to constrain an artist's approach to how things are done because I wouldn't want anybody, limiting me with what I can and cannot do as far as writing. Um,
Mhm.
so it's a best of two worlds kind of approach. I give my general idea and they give theirs, and it usually works out in the end.
Yeah, no, that's definitely good to hear. I mean, that's um, as an artist, I certainly like to work with people who do that. That's just makes it more fun for me. I did wonder who came up with the idea for the lion because I thought to myself like, oh my god, if I were drawing that book, I would not want to draw a lion on his shoulder every other panel.
Yeah,
But you kind of
that
have to. It's Hercules. I mean, it's if you're going to
exactly.
go to that, it's part of the deal. So um, I did think to myself, I thought, boy, I would have made it look like Scar if I could have.
That
Like
would have been a
if I were
cool
stuck with
look.
that.
But everybody, there's got to be certain compromises, obviously, and
Yeah, yeah.
you can if it was you doing it, and shoot, trust me, I'd love nothing more for you to do something with me like this. Eventually, obviously,
Yeah, we,
uh,
we may get to something like that. Who knows?
yeah. But yeah, it's just like I said, I usually let folks kind of run with any ideas that they propose. If, as long as they're cool with doing it a billion times, I'm cool with it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's one of those things I'd be as an artist, I'd be like, oh my god, I got to draw this line every page. But like, yeah, if you're going down this the certain if you're kind of incorporating those things in mythology, I think the line is really important to say. Yeah, like I think if you took someone off the street, they'd be like, yeah, I remember the movie, and I kind of remember that he did some stuff, and he's really strong. But when you bring the lion, then they would probably kind of like, oh yeah, he had a lion or he killed a lion. It kind of brings in the level of mythology that you're engaging with and
Exactly.
says like, yeah, this is kind of where we're at with this. And I think it would be one of those things if I were the artist, I'd be like, oh, this lion, but also like, yeah, no, that's got to be there. That really completely expresses the vibe we're going for.
Exactly.
So let's take a quick break here. I'm going to play a quick movie, and then we'll kind of come back to each campaign, but also talk a little bit about kind of how you're talking to people about like marketing the book and kind of selling the book and what you're doing to get it out there and just kind of compress the real cool things about the book to potential backers. So
Sounds
we'll be
great.
back in just a second. If we can find our page again.
Click that mouse and warp into All Ages of Geek's website, your ultimate portal to everything geek culture. Here you'll find articles that speak your language, from the latest anime buzz to the coolest tech trends. Our mission? To celebrate geekdom in all its glory. Whether you're a gamer, a comic enthusiast, a 90s kid, or an anime aficionado, we've got something for you. Dive deep into them with All Ages of Geek.
All right, so Justin, I want to jump back over to SWAT.
Yeah.
I think your pitch is obviously really strong in terms of like getting across what you're doing there. But tell us a little bit more about like, aside from necessarily like the creative aspects that went into the actual book and some of the characters and things like that. How did you kind of approach the book in terms of like figuring out like how am I going to distill this into something that people really understand and want to back?
It was this is the it's hard for me to talk about it because this was an instance for me of like genuine inspiration. I was just running on what was in the tank, and it was happening, and I did not really feel like I was in control of the story, and that's always a good sign to me, is when things have kind of gotten off the hook. It's a good sign that you're doing good work. So it is extremely, it gets real weird, guys. It gets weird and violent, and there's a lot of black comedy. It's awesome. I can't really tell you how much I believe in it without us. I'd sound like a lunatic. But we're at the stage now where basically we're in the pre-launch phase where we just need people to sign up to, let Zoop know that we're kind of ready. Like there's enough interest on the ground for the campaign to have a chance of success. So that's what I'm doing, all these podcasts for us, to sort of gin up interest and show, what's out there and hopefully attract some interest on that front. So, and by the way, I'm in the comments with my son, so that's me as asking if I can steal the Unusual Suspects, because I'm going to use that. So anyway, I like that a lot. So yeah, we're just on Zoop. We're looking for signups right now. I assure you, you are going to get your money's worth if you buy it. I mean, it's good stuff. I'm so proud of it, and I'm proud of Rachel's work. And so sign up.
Yeah, I wanted to say this earlier, but we're going on other tangents. It reminds me a lot of Pascal Ferry, some of this stuff.
I'm sorry,
really,
what?
Like Pascal Ferry, he's an artist. He's done Adam Strange, I think, is probably his biggest thing. He does a comic online now. He's done some Superman stuff. He did a lot for DC. But I really get that vibe from her art. It's a little cartoony, but not like totally cartoony, and it's really nice stuff.
That was the exact thing I was looking for. I had cruised around. I'd almost hired somebody else. I mean, like if they had wanted to take the money, I would have ended up hiring them, but they didn't want to take the money for some reason for another 2 weeks. So I ended up hiring her. But anyway, I mean, she has the exact right mix of it's silliness, but it's also, serious. It's at the exact right point, I think, for the comedy to land and whatnot. So.
Yeah, I think that's something. I'm not very good at comedy. I'm just not that funny. But it's kind of hard to do. Even when I try to work that in my comics, it's a little bit difficult to do when everyone looks like a certain way. The more expressive your characters can be, and the more like the more blank you have the page, you really have room for that. It works a little bit better. I've noticed that. I didn't really notice it until like maybe 10 years ago, until I started writing. That like really you have to leave a lot of areas open for people to work with humor as a reader, to engage with it. And I think this artwork is in a really good spot for that.
Yeah, it is. I mean, doing comedy in a comic is very timing matters, right? So each one of these dialogue boxes is a beat, when there's multiple things. Or she has a really great eye for when to have the panel be small and when it needs to be big as well. I guess that sounds really, I mean, she has a great eye for it. I think she does a great job with it, but you have to give the artist a lot of space to do what they need to do, for sure. My first scripts were for Edge of Darkness, which is a separate project completely. And when you first start writing comics, you kind of overload the page, right? At least I did, where there's just too much going on. And the artist who was drawing it, who did a great job, was like, "This is 2 pages." I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, as an artist, I can say I don't love to see page 4, 8 panels. Like it's not great.
No, it definitely. It's something I learned. I mean, it's fine, it's something you learn, but the sense of timing, I think, comes with experience. You don't really know what's possible when you're first writing it, unless you've already been doing it. If you've been an artist for a long time, I assume you pick it up there, obviously. But for me, I learned it by doing the scripts. So.
Yeah, and I think when you have a strong humor component, you just need so many probably silent panels to just give you the beats, the timing. Humor is, I think, something that's really hard to do, period. But I think it's especially hard to do in comics. And I mean, that she's good for that.
Yeah, I have a very specific, it's always 2 pages. It's not the first page and then you open to page 2 and 3. Like all the jokes, all the timing is based off a specific. Everything's got 2 pages, thing. So the timing really does matter. It can be very hard to do. But I mean, part of what I like, the challenge of it was writing dialogue that I think sounds like something actual humans would say. And by that, I mean people from Missouri, pretty much, because that's who I talk to, right? So this is what sounds natural to me. But yeah. So writing natural dialogue that's funny it's pretty challenging, but that was a lot of the fun of it, I think. Was just making those jokes stick in a kind of a hostile environment, because you're right, it is difficult to do comedy like this, but when you do it, when it works, it works. So.
Yeah, and I think that's something that I'm glad you're getting out there and trying to put some pages out in the ecosphere during your pre-launch, where you only have that one image, because I think that's something that really I think your pre-launch image is really strong. You gave that Usual Suspects vibe. It looks like Harry Potter. It's got the cop vibes. You definitely get all the things you're trying to sell. But I think when you are doing stuff like this and can get some of the pages out, so people can see it, you really have like a good way to say, hey, this is what you're getting. And I think that when you're doing something that's humor, heavy on the humor, heavy on the tropes, people need to see like, okay, that's cool. I like those things. What are you doing with it? And I think it's a good way to approach it. I did have a question about, obviously, I think this takes place in St. Louis.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
That's the Arch. That's Budweiser, or that's Busch Stadium. And this is, a few blocks away from Busch Stadium, basically. Okay.
Yeah, I'm from Cincinnati, so obviously the Cardinals.
You're breaking up a little bit.
Oh, okay, my bad. I'm from Cincinnati, so obviously I hate the Cardinals.
Oh yeah, well, St. Louis hates everybody, but yeah.
Oh, okay.
They really hate Chicago.
Fair enough, guys.
But yeah.
Oh, I get that. Not sure who's ahead right now, but Chicago's doing pretty well this year. But yeah, I think that's kind of back to what we were saying. Like, I think it's important to think about, when you're doing books like this, like what are you getting across to readers? What are you putting out there? I think is a real important thing to do, because I play with genre a lot with my stuff. I'm kind of just taking the Scarlet Twilight. It's like, okay, it's pulp, but it's this, and it's also a little bit modern. With August, I kind of am doing like a Star Wars, but spaghetti Western, and also kind of an 80s vibe. And I've always been really laser focused on whenever I post an image or I create an image to be posted, whatever context, I want to really make sure I'm getting across what would be cool about that. If you like these genres, if you like these franchises, here's what you're going to get about it. And here's what's different about it as well. Did you ever think about like kind of how you balance those things out? Like, okay, yes, there's some obvious stuff you're going to see here, but here's how it's different. Did that go into like kind of how you decided to put images out there? Like how do you kind of thread that needle?
Well, I guess if you're talking about like subverting tropes, like for instance, like there's a part later on, spoilers, whatever, where there's one of the bad guys is imitating Mimi, right? Like physically, you know, one of those little gewgaws from Harry Potter that lets you look like the other person. And so it looks like I'm leading into the standard double, there's evil twins, which one's the evil one? You got to figure out who the imposter is type of thing. And then I kind of go sideways with it where Mimi finds her evil clone first and just shoots him. Right. So it's kind of you take the cliche and then you just sort of and turn it on its head a little bit. And that's where a lot of, that's kind of what comedy is to some degree, at least sometimes. Mm-hmm. Right. It's, you're playing with expectations and subverting them. So it's always going to be a little bit off. I really believe in deception as writing strategy, right? Like I feel like Game of Thrones, for instance, like the whole Game of Thrones took off was because they tricked you into thinking that you had no idea what was happening, right? It's a bog standard fantasy story once you get to Jon Snow, but they spent 2 or 3 books getting you there so that you feel like and brutally murdering all the fake heroes so that you completely buy in to when they give you the corniest thing on earth, which is the orphan who's secretly the rightful king. Right. So it's genius. It really is. And I just really want the reader to feel like they know what's happening, but not have any idea what's happening at any point. Because I think that's fun. I don't know. That's also kind of life. I feel like it's realism to some degree. So.
Well, it is. I mean, I think that's also if you're going to, I think to kind of wrap that up, like when you're playing with genres that are really familiar to people, you have to do something different. You have to make it really clear what you're doing. You also kind of have to make it clear you can't really completely just subvert it, totally, because if they like these things, this is the kind of person you're trying to draw in. So that's that's a tough one to walk, and I think you have to be really laser focused creatively on not just. You certainly do this down the line, not the beats that hit and this and that, but you kind of at sort of bird's eye view, you have to be focused on like, okay, I need to do something that somebody who likes these things would gravitate to, but also be interested in. And that's, I think, a really smart way to look at it.
I'm not subverting the cliches because I hate them. I'm subverting them because I love them and I want to make them interesting and fun.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So I think if it comes from a place of like, we're all on the team, I'm not making fun of it. I'm playing along with it. It's not going to come across like condescending or angry or, which is a problem sometimes, if you don't respect your audience, they're not going to like it, whatever it is. So you need to find an audience that you really respect. And for me, comics is definitely that. I just love, the reception's been great. And I just love everything about it. So it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, I couldn't say it any better than that. That's a great way to look at it. And kind of, I think everything we do creatively has got to be like, well, it's this with a little bit of that. And so many people, I don't think a lot of people subvert the tropes, but they don't quite know how to say like, here's what's great about this and this and this. And I think especially when you're combining things and mashing them up, it's a good way to do that. So really love to see that. Let's switch back over to Lion of Olympus. And Devin, I'm going to ask you a bit of the same questions.
Yeah. So,
like as far as marketing goes, we talked a little bit about this, but like, how did you conceive of this as? How do we put this together so people get what I'm doing and want to back it?
So for the most part, it's just like Magni was. it's my love of mythology just kind of taking form into, a comic. And for this particular book, you get Hercules. So, for those folks that are out there that really love mythology as much as I do, or maybe even more than me, that's fine. Uh, this is probably the best book that you could possibly back, on Kick, at least in my opinion, on Kickstarter today. Just because, there's a lot of, new explorations of a popular character um, being told, and this is essentially the beginning of those new adventures. Um, I plan for this to go, like I said, as long as I possibly can. I've been trying to, tell folks like, hey, this is, similar to books like, say, I guess the best way to put it is like Wonder Woman. If you threw, Wonder Woman in, old, Greek era and just kind of let her do her thing instead of, modern time kind of stuff. Um, I know I got a shout out from Michael Avon Oming the other day, which was really nice. I really enjoy his work, and he did Ares and Beta Ray Bill for Marvel
Yeah.
on his own, and some other books that I'm very fond of. So he also did some mythology stuff in his career as well. So it's just like, all right, cool. If I got his eye, I think I can, get everybody else to, at least jump on board, try it out, try something new from a newer creator. And I don't think that your time will be wasted. If anything, I think you'll want a lot more of what I'm putting down. I even got Chris Sotomayor on this. He's a great colorist who I'm again very fond of. He did Avengers, he did Captain Marvel when I was a kid. A bunch of other great books as well. He did the colors on this cover right here, and it's just like, what a better team for me to work with. I think I have a all-star team of creatives just, giving their all on this, and for people to come around and just support this means a lot to me. So I'd appreciate anybody's support, even if it's just sharing it on social media. That's better than absolutely nothing.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think when you look at the way you've approached this, you're really leaning into like the existing knowledge somebody has of Hercules, and I think that's when I've seen you post about this. I think that's something you emphasize a little bit, and that's obviously really smart. I'd love to hear that you reach out. Have you kind of reached out to other creators and see what they thought about it, or you mentioned Michael Oeming? I think everybody's familiar with.
So
Did you kind of approach people, or did they just kind of gravitate to it?
I think it was a little bit of both. I would say I know I reached out to Brian Hawkins. He has a book out with Bad Bug currently, a Medusa book, if I'm correct. And then
Yeah,
there
no,
were a
it's
couple other
doing
creators that I
pretty well.
reached out to, just to inquire about what they thought about the idea and so on and so forth. But everything else has just been word of mouth. Folks that gravitate toward it have been very, like I said, very supportive of the project. More than I thought people would be. Um, it's just getting people to kind of latch on to things. I know one of the biggest trepidations of crowdfunding comics is just like, am I going to get the book? Will I like the book? Will it be something that I continue to back in the future? And
Mm-hmm.
I try to give folks the benefit of the doubt of, at least when they back my projects, I try to give everybody a little bit of something that would continue to pique their interest, so to speak. And I think I've done well with that. So I think the Lion of Olympus is no different. We're just leaning even harder into things that I enjoy and think other people would enjoy, so to speak. So that way we can keep that love spreading, and overall you just enjoying comic books together. Like what's better in life?
Well, guys, if you both have wrapped up this segment on like really good points, I don't think I could say anything better than that. That's what it's all about.
Exactly.
Yeah. So anyone watching this on YouTube, the links to these books are in the description. Just pan down and you can right to the Kickstarter or Zoo pages for these books. I want to jump over to a few other books that we want to highlight. These are also in the description. The first one is Mr. Guy Zombie Hunter, which is going to go live this week. I did a cover for this, and I'll reveal that in a few days. We haven't quite, I don't think I've posted that yet. I'm not sure they have either. This is really cool stuff. It's kind of got a Deadpool vibe. But again, I look at this one, and Justin, it reminds me of your book a little bit, like in that there's a lot of humor, and it's so hard to do in comics. And when I read this book, I thought, boy, that is tough to do, and they did it really well. So if you're into that, check out the previous issues and check out the pre-launch for this. It's going to launch, and very cool stuff. The other one I want to jump to is Shade 1 and 2, the Shadow Saga. I've seen a few pages of this. The artwork is pretty solid. It's kind of a secret agent-y superhero vibe with some supernatural elements. Very cool stuff. Really looks. I think this one is much of like Valiant comics from the 90s. They have like a really cool superhero vibe that incorporated some of the elements, but it really also was down to earth. Really told you what it was about very quickly, and I think it's a really cool book. Absolutely check this one out. The other one I want to share is Zeta Galaxy Outlaws, which is also in pre-launch on Kickstarter. This one, I've seen some pages from this. It is next level stuff. This artist is going to be a superstar. It's almost like Brian Stelfree's level. The designs are amazing, and the story is great. It's kind of a bounty hunter space person who realizes she's not on the right side of things and makes some changes. But just going to play up how this artwork looks. It's amazing stuff. And one other thing I want to bring up is here I didn't have it in my windows. Bring it up right now is another book, the hero element called Puff Puff Parent. It's taking a little bit of a time to load. Let's try this. So hopefully this will be up in a second, but just to give you some background, it's a huge book. It's basically if Danny Tanner started to smoke marijuana for whatever reason, and kind of gets a diagnosis, realizes he has to change his life a little bit, and he's a former Dare Against Drugs person who has to make some changes. But this one's really great. Coming up on the deadline here, has a little bit of way to go, but this is a cool book. I've seen a lot of the pages. Really great stuff. And I think that's it. If you're the only thing I'll bring up other than that is my book, which is called We Are Scarlet Twilight, Cobalt Crisis. It's coming out pretty soon. It's in pre-launch now with Kickstarter. This is also in the description. It's basically if Crisis on Infinite Earths had happened in the 1940s. So you get all that Golden Age adventure, but also the sort of big continuity heavy, earth-shattering stuff. And if you're a fan of either of those things, I think you'll really dig it.
That's really cool. They all look great.
Looking forward to it.
Thanks. But yeah, great books here. Guys, your books are awesome. I really hope everybody will check it out. So I think how much, Justin, obviously you're in pre-launch now at Zoop. Do you know when you're going to launch?
Basically, like I said, they want to get to a certain number of signups. I mean, this is what I've been told. That's not official policy, but basically we need to prove that there's enough people that have put eyes on it that it's worth starting. So hopefully soon. Okay. I'm doing every podcast on Earth this month. So, hopefully it'll get, move the needle a little bit. So
sounds good. And Devin, your book has 15 days to go. Almost halfway to the goal. Doing pretty well. But obviously this is a great book. If you're into Hercules, any mythology type stuff, I think people are really going to dig it.
I agree.
Any other last words you guys want to say about your campaigns?
If you truly enjoy Greek mythology, like I said before, and will continue to say, go ahead and check out my project. We got 15 days and about 2,000 and some change to go. So, any support is a great support, and I appreciate you guys taking the time to listen to me.
Yeah, well, it's nice meeting you.
Same.
All right. Well, that sounds good. Justin, anything else, or I think you kind of wrapped it up there.
Sign up.
Sounds good.
All right.
Last thing I want to say before we leave is we're part of the Geek Collective Network. You can get a good deal on your Gemini mailers if you go to Gemini Comic Supply and put in the code Geek Collective 10. You get 10% off. Obviously, the more you're buying, that can really add up. And I have to say, as a creator, I work way too hard in my stuff to send it out and have it be beat up in the mail. So certainly check that out. But other than that, guys, thank you for coming on. It's great to talk. It's great to see these books. And I think that's it for this week. We'll see you all next week. And take it easy, everybody.
All right. See ya.
Thank you.